So, Rachel Reeves has finally delivered what is probably the most trailed and certainly the most discussed budget in decades in this country. And there is lots of people trawling over the results. Who wins, who loses, what's it going to do for the economy, what will it do for Labour's chances, etc. The headlines always write themselves. And there are plenty of people amongst the commentariat talking about that. So I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. So, whenever a minister, a politician, deals with the economy, some of the less bright ones, expect to be able to pull a lever and then make an outcome happen, whether that be increase the government's income, reduce the welfare bill, increase growth, reduce waiting lists, whatever. But the economy, it's not a machine. It's not even a complex machine, because with machines, you can take an input, say the pulling of a lever or pressing of a button, and with knowledge of physics, work out the outcome. No, the economy is not a machine. The economy is a very complex ecosystem. And like any ecosystem, the things you get out the far side aren't necessarily things that you thought you'd get or indeed want. Ecosystems do not obey what you want them to do. And so for this video, I'm not going to go analysing the budget overall. What I'm going to do is look at the unintended consequences. The things that Rachel Reeves and the government may not have thought would happen, and indeed probably don't want to happen, but may, probably, or indeed certainly will happen as a result of the policies they've introduced and the taxes they've changed. And in no particular order, I'm going to start with the changes to the minimum wage. Now, if you are a young person particularly, and on minimum wage, and that change is good news for you. It means you'll get a pay rise, and good luck to you. But by increasing that minimum wage, what the Chancellor has done is yet again shrink the graduate premium. So that's the gap between a wage a graduate could expect to get upon graduation and the wage that somebody who hasn't graduated can get. That premium is already at the lowest it's ever been, and this goes further and further, and it makes the choice of going to university look less and less sensible from an economic standpoint. In addition, because you raise the floor of what is a minimum wage to pay someone, it then drives wages up elsewhere, which you may say is a good thing because everyone likes to get paid more. But if businesses have to pay more in total for their staff bill, then one of several things happens. Number one, prices go up, which hits inflation. Number two, they just hire less people, so that hits jobs and economic growth. Or three, they decide there's no difference really, or not a big enough difference between a new employee, someone with no experience, and someone with a few years experience. If the gap isn't big enough, why bother taking risk with someone with no evidence they can do what they can do? And so you find new entrants to the market just can't get a job. Why would you pay almost the same for somebody with no experience when for just a few pounds more, you can get somebody with 2 or 3 years experience? And so we find that youth unemployment, which is already double the average employment in this country, will get worse. The next area is tax incentives for companies that make big investments, so that you can put it through your P&L and therefore reduce the profits you report and reduce your tax bill. Now, anything which encourages investments, which in this country has been poor for a number of years, is all to the good, and I support that. However, there will be consequences. And one of the consequences is that tax benefit all goes to capital intensive industries. And if you're a labour intensive industry, you don't get that same benefit. What that means is investors are going to look at businesses to put their money into, and they're going to go, there's more profit to be had in capital intensive industries, and I'll support those. So labour intensive industries may find it harder to raise capital. It also means they may find it harder to hire the staff they need. And as a result, it may accelerate the use of automation, which will hit jobs. And the growth that the government's hoping to get out of releasing these capital allowances may actually be counterset by the loss of economic activity because of lower jobs. Next, we have plans for green infrastructure. Net zero in this country has been inhibited by the lack of connections and the age of our grid, meaning a lot of the things that we've built for generating electricity aren't actually supplying electricity a lot of the time. So if we're going to continue with the green revolution, then these are the kind of things we need, and it requires not just more money, but a lot more trained staff to be able to build the things and do the connections. All well and good, you say, if you like green things, but there is a limit to number of trained personnel in this country, and if you suck them all up on a big national project, what you then do is limit their availability, and the kind of skills needed are the kind of things that you go into, say, construction, homes, which we know that we have a dearth of in this country. And the government's already finding it hard to hit its 1.5 million target. Well, let's say impossible, and this will just make it that much harder. And also, because of all the upfront costs, unless they're very, very careful, it means that bills will go up to pay for all these costs before we see the benefit, if there is any, and I am honest, I'm doubtful, from the lower costs from this green energy. One quick thing, Harley here, say hello Harley, has a quick request. Would you mind hitting the like button and maybe subscribing? Most people who watch these videos don't, and it really, really helps. Okay, that's it, back to the video. We then have reforms of the non-dom status, closing a tax loophole, the Treasury would say. Fair enough, but we already see an exit of both UK and foreign-born wealth creators. For a while this is poo-poo by some people, but now the Treasury has accepted that it's a real thing. And this will just cement the idea that the UK is not a welcoming place for rich people. You may not care, you may say good riddance to the greedy so-and-sos, and that's a position to take, then that's fine. But the results are that it will be harder to bring in certain key people, those people involved in, say, biosciences, tech, finance. They just won't come here. Those that are already here, it'll give them one more reason to leave. And it was bad enough with the changes to inheritance last year, such that your worldwide inheritance, if you die, gets captured by the UK government. So a lot of people, including Labour's biggest ever donor, left as a result of that. And this makes it worse. Furthermore, the money that they would get in as a result of the changes, well, it doesn't take many people to either not come here or leave to actually end up with lower tax receipts, which means higher taxes for the rest of us. Not to mention the impact on a lot of high-end services, high-end businesses, luxury businesses, which again, you may not care about, but they employ people and they contribute to the economy, so we see lower economic growth. Next, we have something which I broadly agree with, but only as part of much bigger reforms, which sadly aren't here. And that's the widening of the corporate tax base. The idea is that you remove loopholes, broaden it, simplify it so that it applies to more people and you can gather more income, tax receipts, without increasing the rate. But that only really works if you also simplify the rest of the tax code. Otherwise, all you do is create losers, and losers punish you or they go somewhere else. And in our case, that's exactly what may happen. Some people who were paying less tax now have to pay more as a result, and that makes their businesses less attractive to investors, which means the investment money may go elsewhere, and those businesses don't have the capital they need to grow. And in some cases, because of those changes, tech startups, where a lot of the growth comes from, can't expense some of their early losses in the same way, and it becomes a lot harder for them to raise capital. The NHS is always central to what Labour wants to do, and so it's no surprise the next thing we look at is funding and manpower for the NHS. And the government plans to hire a lot more people into the NHS, particularly nurses and for those in social care, and fund this with incentives, higher wages, etc. Now that's popular on the left and amongst other supporters, but it comes at a cost. There are only so many people out there amongst the workforce to do these jobs, and it crowds out those people from working elsewhere in, say, the private sector. The private sector is more efficient than the public sector. And so if those staff then go to the NHS, there are less people available for the private sector, they can take on less people, which means the NHS has to take on more, but they're more efficient. So overall, less people get covered for the same costs, so therefore our costs go up for a worse service. It At the same time, a lot of those people are also eligible to work in other labour pools. So you see that there is a competition for employees in places like hospitality and retail, and because of the offer to pay more in the NHS, you get wage inflation across the piece as everybody tries to compete for a limited labour pool. So while I understand the need and the desire to reduce things like waiting list, this is not the way to do it. And if you've seen any of my recent videos, you'll know that I place the civil service as a major source of the problems of this country, and the need to reform it is right up there, if not at the very top, at least the top 3 things that any government should address. And so it was disappointing to see that as part of Rachel Reeves' plans, she's going to centralise a lot more power and decision making into the already very powerful Treasury. Now this means that you're going to have an organisation that already can't make decisions responsible for making more decisions. The outcome of which will be less decisions made, and those decisions will be made badly. As poor as the other departments and ministries are, at least what few experts the government has on the topics that they're responsible for sit in those ministries. They don't sit in the Treasury. So all in all, unless you are going to reform the Treasury first, this was a really bad idea. Having said at last year's budget that this was a one-off tax increase, she wouldn't be back for more, and now having come back for more again, she has said the same thing again. This is a one-off and she won't be back for more, as she now has created more fiscal headroom. Whether that's true or not, we'll have to wait and see. But this smorgasbord of tax and rule changes she's made are not designed to increase growth. As the saying goes, you cannot tack yourself into prosperity. However, a lot of the changes don't come in for 2 or 3 or even 4 years' time. So whether or not they are going to do damage before the election remains to be seen, but damage they will do. I just hope that Rachel, or whoever follows her, remembers the basic maxim that the economy is not a machine, it's a complex ecosystem. It does not do what you want it to do, and it does things that you don't expect. And let's just hope that the unexpected doesn't come to hurt us all. Cheers for now.